I'd now like to invite we have a panel of current graduate students here to talk to you about the experience of being a grad student. So I'd love to welcome them to the front now. Do you prefer to stand or sit? Okay, if you're all sitting, I wish to come and join you. We'll see how this goes with Mike. Nope, this is just not going to go. Okay, I neglected to put your slide up. Would you care to introduce yourselves? Would you like to start, Robert?
Morning, everyone. My name is Robert Leprairie. I'm a third-year PhD student in the Department of Pharmacology at DAL. I originally came to DAL from Saskatoon, where I did a bachelor's in biochem, and I've been living in Halifax now for 5 years.
Hi, I'm Kayla Hurdle. I am going into my fourth year as a PhD candidate in English literature here at Dalhousie, and before that I did my Master's of English here as well.
Hey everyone, this is Jonathan and I'm doing my Master's in Internet Working. So prior to that I was doing my Bachelor's back in my country, India. So I'm here for Halifax for 9 months.
First, I'd love to ask you, what's the most important thing that you didn't know before you got here? I mean, it's okay if no one learned anything. We'll accept that as an answer.
Yeah, the snowstorms. Yeah, I totally didn't expect any kind of snowstorm. I never heard of the word prior, but I know what snow, but never a snowstorm. And luckily we had 2 or 3 classes off because of that. Yeah, so I won't forget that.
I was surprised by that too, and I'm from Canada. I was just like, the East Coast, it's by an ocean. Of course it'll be warmish. I mean, the weather is lovely. You'll enjoy the climate.
So the most important thing I learned before, or the most important thing I think I learned becoming a grad student, as a grad student, was how much you rely on the other grad students around you. And you really need to kind of make use of the friendships you make now, because they're going to be a really important community the longer you stay here.
I see some agreement. And actually, if you don't mind, have a follow-up question for that. What communities are you active in, and how did you get involved? I mean, obviously, there is DAGs, but there are also a lot of associations that are faculty or department specific, and of course non-academic communities as well. Would anyone like to speak to that?
So I'm on the medical campus, so this will be more medical campus oriented, but get involved with your department specific society as well. Like I'm involved in the pharmacology society. And then in the Tupper building on Friday afternoons, we have what's called a Tupper mixer. It's basically just cheap beer and a lot of fun, and you can just hang out with people and get to know them. And then the sports teams, the rec teams on campus are really great and a good way to get involved around here.
Thank you.
Basically the same thing. English department has a speaker series on Fridays. Get involved in those sort of activities. You may have to sit through a presentation of something you don't particularly enjoy, but afterwards you get to mix and get to know your fellow cohort and professors, and I concur with the sports teams. I don't really play sports, but I joined 2 from my department and really enjoy it, so the intramural teams are really great. And then student governance, so I was the president of the Dalhousie Association of Graduate Students in English, and it was a really great experience. So if your department has some executive positions open, even if it's a small one like social coordinator, you should do it so that you can get involved and get to know people.
So yeah, to start with, the sports is a very important one because the place where I come from is more known to cricket and everything. So the thing after I came over here, so I wanted to really start going with the momentum of playing the games. And we got a nice group of people to play games, and that's how Mahbub and everyone over here got introduced ourselves. So it's definitely a must for us to have an outdoor event that we need to connect with. And also for every department specific, we do have a couple of opportunities over there, learning ones, especially the industry specific ones. So those are the kind of things that we need to get involved.
Back when I was a grad student, my department also had Friday afternoon colloquium, and it was actually after colloquium at the grad house that I found both my supervisor and also my thesis project. Speaking of which, how did you find your supervisors, and is there any advice that you'd like to give about the process?
So I found my supervisor through kind of a long search of different research areas that I might be interested in across Canada, not just at DAL. And then I took a long time to speak with my supervisor to make sure that we would be a good fit for each other, because it really is a long-term working relationship. And I really believe that if done properly, should lead to kind of that long-term professional relationship between you and your supervisor that ends up being mutually beneficial.
I asked some of the faculty in my department for suggestions on who would be a good supervisor based on the project I wanted to work on, and then went and met with these professors and got to know them and their research areas before deciding on my supervisor and asking her if she would be my supervisor. One thing I would stress is that their feelings aren't hurt if you decide you don't like them and you want to work with someone else. Even if it's, a couple weeks in and you aren't clicking, you can ask someone else. And at least in my department, they've told me that that's not a big deal and that it doesn't hurt their feelings and that it's about you and making your project work for you.
So from the engineering perspective, we need to be connected to our department coordinators, first place, and the second place where I looked at was the labs that I was taking on. So, and towards my field of interest, and you'll particularly find a couple of staffs and instructors over there as well. So that's the way I figured out my supervisor over here.
Thank you. So was there any change in your research topic or your academic focus over the time of your study? That looks like a yes to me.
I changed my project 4 times. Nobody was that upset. And it wasn't a big deal to change it at all. I came in wanting to do medieval literature and decided I did not like medieval literature after all, and that I liked a different type. I liked romanticism. So I changed my project, and then I changed my focus a couple times within that specific area. So you can change it. You don't have to stick to what you're doing, at least not in English. So, yeah.
So I actually initially started with a master's, and then when that was wrapping up, I defended that master's thesis and started into a PhD program because I wanted to change directions. But just like she was just saying, for English and science, it's okay to change your project. And a lot of times you just have to follow the data that your experiments are giving you or your research is giving you, and that will often lead to a change in project, and that's great. That's good.
So I have selected one of my project, and the day of submission is like for the next week. So probably I won't change my topic at this point, but I'm very hopeful that it'll be changed soon. Yeah.
Thanks. So what would you say has been your biggest challenge, and how did you overcome it? I know that's a tough one.
So myself being an international student, my undergrad was being my home country. The way of education over there was pretty different from what's over here. So I personally believe that I'm putting 5 to 6 times the effort which I put back in my undergraduate over here. So it was pretty difficult, but I had a chance to connect with the seniors, couple of seniors prior to coming over there. They told me that you'll have to be channelized right from the beginning. So the best place is to connect with your seniors and your fellow colleagues over there and your staffs. So they'll be helping you in that.
That's great. I'm so glad that we're hearing about your communities being supportive, about your faculties, about your fellow grad students. Like, that's just great to hear.
For me, my biggest challenge, so I'm a father of 3 kids, and so my life is busy because I have kids. But just like you were just saying, with community support, it's key. You need to find a good community. I needed to find people that I could trust to be babysitters when I was going crazy. So yeah, just find friends, make friends, and keep them.
For me, it was time management. I color code my agendas and I'm very type A, and I found out very quickly that you have to make time for you, as Dr. Leonard was saying. You have to do things outside of your project or else you'll go crazy. And trying to stick to an extremely rigorous schedule when other things come up doesn't always work. So you have to be a bit more flexible. I think that was my problem, was I was not flexible, and now I think I'm a bit more flexible, and it's definitely helped. So, yeah.
Thanks. And is there any advice that you would give this room full of brand new grad students? I mean, no pressure or anything.
For me, the best part about grad school has actually been not within the grad school environment itself or in the lab, but doing like the professional development things like Dr. Leonard was talking about. The MyTax seminars are great. I've gone to a couple. That's my plug for those. But if you get a chance to go to any conferences, any meetings, to show off your own research, to show off your own work, to show off DAL, conferences are amazing. You learn so much, and you get to meet people in your own field all over the place, and you get to learn just how kind of universal the struggle is and how universal the fun is.
I would echo the getting involved in activities sentiment that has been going around, whether it be in your department or outside. It's really important.
So yeah, being a grad student, the scope is not only within the class, it's beyond the class. So there's a lot of traits that we need to develop, especially leadership ones and things like that. And also being in engineering, under the engineering domain, things change very rapidly. And the most important thing is that we need to start focusing towards what the industry needs. So it keeps on changing quite fast. So we need to cope with that and learn new things out of our own interests, outside the books and all these things. So that would be the advice I can give to you guys.
I'd love to open it up if there's anything that you want to say, anything that my questions haven't touched on. Perfect. I hear an invitation to open it up from questions from the audience. So yes, you're here, you're new to DAO. What would you like to hear from these seasoned veterans? Advice on the best coffee shops? Actual questions?
I have a question for Jonathan. How tough our course is. I'm from networking here, networking here. And how tough our course is. Can I easily get B minus?
So that's a very difficult question. I don't know. I have to put myself in your shoes and see. So I'm basically a 70 percentiler back in my country. So as I told you, like I used to study like 1 or 2 days prior to the exam when I was back in my country. But the case is not here. I had to start like 2 weeks back. Things are a little different and a little difficult over here. It's a little challenging as well. So, yep, I'm sure that you will get a B minus. Don't worry. I'll connect with you personally and I'll let you know what all you need to do for that B minus.
Okay, do we have another question? Come on, we have such a wealth of experience in these three people. I'm sure there's something that you were dying to know. Okay, well, thank you. Oh.
Excuse me, sorry, thank you. How soon after starting your graduate program did you decide what your thesis project would be?
I had to apply for SHIRK grants, and they were due beginning of October, so I had to come up with a made-up thesis project as soon as I got here. But it's a practice in fictional writing. You don't actually have to to adhere to that. So I had to come up with a project in September, but I didn't actually settle on anything until after all of my coursework because, like I said, I changed my mind about what I liked based on a class that I took that I really enjoyed the material we were covering, and I liked it more than what I had said I was going to work on. So I changed my mind, and it was about April before I decided what I really wanted to do. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I, like you, had to apply for a CIHR in October. So I practiced writing fiction. And then 6 months after starting my program, I figured out what I was actually doing.
Perfect. And I think we have time for one more question. Okay, well, I see 2 questions here, so maybe we'll try to do 2 more questions.
I was just wondering how you found, how easy was it to get funding? Like, do you find that you had to work any extra jobs on the side? I mean, you probably work as TAs and stuff like that, but yeah, how is that for paying for tuition and living expenses and whatnot as a grad student?
I work a second job outside of being a teaching assistant, which is something that's included in the English department in terms of your what you get to do. So you get to TA a class, and that's great. But I found it wasn't quite enough to eat. So I got involved with some of the things on campus, and I ended up getting a job coaching swimming at Dalhousie for recreational swimming, and I work that 5 times a week, and it helps. And not only does it help pay for things, but it also gives me a chance to get away from my project and meet people who aren't just going to ask me, what am I doing here, over and over again. So, yeah.
I tutor in the College of Pharmacy, or TA, same difference there. And then in addition to that, in the summer, I'll often pick up tutoring jobs or lecturing jobs for summer term classes. The other important thing is in applying for scholarships and awards, certain scholarships and awards like the Killam or the Tri-Council Awards, if you manage to get those, and right now the funding competition is quite difficult, but it is certainly possible. If you do get those awards, then Dalhousie will also tack on a President's Award, which covers tuition. So that really helps. It makes a huge difference.
That's a great point. If anyone hasn't had a look at the scholarship page of our website, it is certainly not too late. And also, if you speak to your grad coordinator and supervisor, they very well may know of sort of discipline-specific scholarships as well.
So yeah, I myself work outside, apart from the classes as well, just to manage my rent and my food. But my suggestion would be like not to start immediately, just to know whether we will be able to cope up with the classes as well as the work. I would probably suggest to wait for a couple of months, have 1 or 2 courses, see whether you'll be able to cope up, and then take up with it. But as they said, the departments have their own specific scholarships. So if you study well, probably if you get there, we don't have to work for the one complete year. Yep. That's how it is.
Thank you. And we had one more question.
Hi, thanks, guys. I was just wondering about the involvement of your committee in the whole process. How involved were they? Did you expect more of an involvement or want more of an involvement or less? And what your overall impression was, I guess.
Perfect.
So I can speak to this in terms of how my department works. I think every department is a little bit different. With my department, we meet with our committees every 6 months, and usually the committees are 3 other people plus your supervisor. I found them really helpful, even if it's just to check and make sure you're kind of ticking all the boxes in your program. But they're also a good sounding board just to say, like, this is the research I'm doing. Does it make sense? Oh, you don't think it makes sense? Okay, well, how can we work on this? So it's been really helpful, and I think it's a resource that should be used as often as possible.
In the English department, again, department specific, it's a similar makeup in terms of the committee. I met with my supervisor every other week because I'm a needy person. And she was happy to do that, and I found that that was really helpful in terms of a sounding board. When I was trying to decide if I should change my project, my committee was very supportive and told me that they didn't want to supervise me working on a project I hated, and that they'd rather help me figure out how to change it. So I definitely have a very involved committee, but when I did my master's, my committee was a bit more hands-off, and that worked fine for a shorter project. So, yeah.
Yeah, the first step is always to find what's your likeness towards the technology and which field that you want to really do it. And then when you connect up with your staffs and supervisors, so probably they'll be the ones who let you know who is the right person to guide you in this field of project or anything. So that's how I made a choice of my project over here.
Thank you so much to our three panelists. We really appreciate your being here today.